Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another chapter of Experiencer Interviews. And today we've got another amazing soul coming to us from the US, but now residing in Canada. We have Beata Van Berkom on board today. Beata is also known as the Tinfoil Hat Lady. She created the Subversive lecture of Tinfoil Hat Lady, a one-woman stand-up show on 9/11 in 2007, and the name stuck. A retired medical laboratory technologist, Beata is also a professional stage, film, TV, voiceover, and new media artist. Born in America but residing in Canada, she offers Jikiden Reiki, sound healing, inversion therapy, and personal development consulting. She has had experiences with the paranormal and extraterrestrials since childhood. She has traveled to Egypt, Jordan, Peru, Bolivia, India, and the UK, visiting several sacred ancient sites. Her goal is to teach people of their worthiness as human beings. She wants to encourage people to live in their spiritual body and to know God. She does not labor under the spirit of religion, but she follows the teachings of Christ consciousness. So thank you so much for coming on, Beata.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Gray.
So you told me that you were born in North Dakota. So could you talk about your childhood and if any of your relatives had similar experiences as yourself?
Sure. Well, I was born in Crosby, North Dakota, which is a small town just across the border from Saskatchewan in the belly button of Canada here. And my parents had a wonderful house in Minot, North Dakota. My father grew up in a town called Powers Lake, North Dakota. And I still go down there and visit, every summer to keep in touch with my relatives. The Van Berkom name is quite known down there because there was 7 Van Berkom brothers who homesteaded there from Holland back in the day and married the Norwegian population and stuff like that. So I have my feelings that my father may have experienced some things that he wasn't able to express. And my mother, who is actually from Canada, who went and met my father in America, she has also had some metaphysical and UFO experiences. So, and I also think that my father's mother, because she, in conversation with my mother, had talked about seeing things over the barn, et cetera, et cetera. So as far as that goes, it wasn't really like something we all talked about or anything, but my family is quite open-minded. My dad's family and how I was raised was Baptist. And then when I moved up to Canada, I went to a Catholic school. But I think when I was a kid, I was just very curious. And my parents had this divorce, and there was a lot of trauma and stress going on when I was under the age of 6. And that's when I started to really like have some of my more intense experiences that I've had in my life when I was younger. The first thing, in the house in Minot, and also in my dad's mother's farmhouse where my dad grew up. I had 2 very major experiences there. And that kind of set the tone for my life. And I didn't really understand the context of these experiences until I got much older, as we tend to do. It started again in about grade 12 with me. And then just as recently as 2017, I had my encounter with that being in my room. But I moved up to Canada here when I was about 6 or 8 years old. I can't remember. It was 1971, and I was born in 63. So that's when Mom decided to move us back up here to the belly button of Canada, and things have just progressed. So that's where I come from, anyway.
Nice. So let's get into your first experience. What happened to you?
So the first experience that I remember is that I was sleeping in my bedroom in Minot, North Dakota. I got a chance to visit the outside of the house this summer, and my wiener dog, my pet dog, was sleeping between my knees on the bed. And I just remember the door to the bedroom just coming open very quickly, and there being a giant bright light coming in the door, and also this strange sound, like a loud sound, like wah or something like that. And I was just aware that my body, like I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. And then now, since I talked to Robert, my friend in England, he's explained to me that this is actually a thought that they give you, but I thought it was my thought because the dog started to growl at this noise and this light, like that. And if you know wiener dogs, they bite. And so the thought they gave me, or the thought I had, was, well, it's a good thing I'm paralyzed, because if I could move, my dog would bite me because she's quite upset right now. And then it was just done like that. And the door was shut and everything was back to normal. And I got up and I went to my parents' bedroom and I was like, hey, did you hear this noise? This thing happened. And my parents were, oh, you heard a cat fighting, go back to bed, type of thing. So they weren't aware of anything. And that was the very first thing. Do you want me to go on to the second thing, or is there? Because it's in the farmhouse. Again, I'm probably between 6 and 8. And well, wait a minute, before I go on, the way I think about that original experience is, I thought, oh, that's the beginning of the experience. The door opened and something came in my room. But I think it was them returning me, if you know what I'm saying. Like, as I'm getting older, I'm thinking I'm remembering the end of events rather than the beginning of events per se. I'm waking up too soon, quote, quote, as I did during my C-section as well. Anyways, okay, so the second time I had a paranormal experience like this, it was in my dad's farmhouse where he grew up, my dad's home. And my sister and I were sleeping in one of the bedrooms off the living room where there was a double bed. And I just remember waking up in the middle of the night, and I'm on my hands and knees facing the doorway and looking out, not laying in the bed, but looking out the doorway. And I see this, what I described as a half man, half wolf, running around in a circle in the living room. And there was this very bright light coming in the picture window. And I was, shocked at this. And the bright light, again, the voice that they told me, or what I thought was, oh, that's just a bright yard light. And there was absolutely no explanation about this half man, half wolf, is what I thought. Now, I screamed, Grandma, Grandma, there's a half man, half wolf running around in the front room. Grandma, Grandma. And my sister tells me, because she was sleeping in the bed, that she did hear me say that, but she didn't want to have anything to do with it. So she just opened her eyes. And what she saw was a man that looked like a sheep. And again, she had a favorite sheep toy. And so they would, of course, let her see something that wouldn't scare her. And then she didn't want anything to do with it. So she pretended she was asleep, but she remembers Grandma coming in and everything like that. My girlfriend in Ottawa, she was running one day and she saw a little gray run across the path in front of her, and it ran on all fours. And I thought, oh, wait a minute. What was that I saw? And then I was out in the yard and I saw this little mouse, and I came upon him and he started running in a circle because he was so afraid, running in a circle. And all of a sudden I thought, wow, that was like a little being who was afraid because I was waking up too soon and he hadn't gone out yet, and he was running in a circle. And that's what was going on there. And then I did have a regression where I got to have the experience of coming back through the picture window. So again, this was the end of the experience. They were bringing me back and I woke up too soon and I could see them leaving. So we were coming back. I could see through the wall of the craft. Everything was sort of like sepia tone, like a black and white in my regression, how I visioned it, coming back through the picture window. And so I guess then I connected that up with they were bringing me back, but then I was, looking out. So that was quite interesting. So there's my sister who corroborates this. She remembers that. And she remembers light coming from the other side of the bedroom window as well. So this light wasn't just the yard light. It was obviously around the whole house. Now, the second thing that happened in that room is there's another bedroom off the living room, and I was sleeping in that bedroom. And again, this paralysis kind of came over me, and I could see through the wall at my feet, the studs in the wall, and sort of if it became backlit. Before, you saw this in Hollywood movies, because I just saw what I called monkey people. They had quite large heads, the little bodies, long arms, and there was one or two of them. And the voice, what they told me was, just stay still and they won't find you. Because I felt like they were trying to find me, and it made me scared because I couldn't move. And so the voice said, just be still and they won't see you. And so that's all I remember of that. But again, that suggestion that they give you. So do you want me to continue? Is there any
Well,
questions you have at
yeah,
this
but
point?
what happened?
Yeah.
Now, like were you paralyzed when that happened? Did
Yeah,
the
I was in that state of paralysis. And so I had the sense of like, oh, they want to get me. Like when I saw them, they were looking for me and they just looked like silhouettes through the wall. And then to calm me down, they gave me the suggestion, or I had the thought, just be still and they won't see you. And so I was okay with being still, which was being paralyzed.
did you black out after that?
Yeah, I don't remember anything after that. Like that's all I remember out of that one.
Okay.
And
I never felt the paralyzation per se, but I was drugged one time, waking up super drugged. My fiance at the time was sleeping. I had a black portal appear in the bedroom doorway, and I had like five, at least 6 foot tall shadow beings, really broad shouldered, really big, perfect round helmets on their head. I only
mm,
saw the silhouettes, totally black,
mm.
but I was drugged. So I never felt that paralyzing thing, but
Well, this is all when I was younger.
yeah.
So
So
maybe they paralyze children more readily. I don't know. I
like,
don't know.
were you
But
freaked out?
um, I guess I just was going through so many other things in my life, those two in the farmhouse, because we were going through the divorce and everything. And this would have just been another thing. And none of the adults really wanted to encourage me worrying about something like that, you know.
Yeah.
So now when I got older, I was in grade 12. I remember going to this camp up north. And the summer before I went, I was sitting in a park with this boy who I really had a crush on. And it was a daytime situation. And there was a gray disc on the horizon. And we both kind of looked up and saw this gray disc. And you know how you have the knowing of that disc sees us and it knows we're looking at it. And, you know, and it was like this weird thing. And then it zipped off, like just zip. And he looked at me and said, "Did you see that?" And because I really just wanted to hang out with him and kiss him and stuff, I said no. I just totally denied it. But that summer, when I went up north to camp, we went on a thing called Adventure Leadership Experience. This was called St. John Bosco Camp. And they left you alone on an island in a lake called Amisk Lake in northern Saskatchewan, where it's all the Canadian Shield. It's all granite and beautiful up there. And they left me on this island, and I said goodbye. They threw my gear on the shore. Canoe went around the corner, and I was so happy to be alone and be on my solo. I'd been so looking forward to spending this 24 hours by myself. We had all the gear to make our camp and everything, but I was a little tired because we had been paddling and stuff for days. So I sat down and I looked into this beautiful clean northern lake with the big boulders down there, and I just was like looking at the water. And then something told me I should say my name over and over in my head. Now I was about 18 years old, so I didn't know what a mantra was, or I was 17 probably. And I just kept saying my name, Beata, 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 Beata. And then all of a sudden it was like my name turned into something I didn't recognize. It turned into a sound, like a tone. And I didn't recognize the sound at all. And then all of a sudden, snap, it was just like smack. It never got dark or anything like that. I just remember I looked up, like there was this snap, and then I looked up, and the canoe that they had just dropped me off was coming around the corner. And I was like, hi, and they were waving at me. And I said, what are you doing back here? And they said, well, we've come to pick you up. And I said, well, you just dropped me off. And they said, yeah, we dropped you off yesterday. And then I realized, holy, I got to shut up now. And so she looked and she saw all my gear where she had thrown it. And she goes, well, didn't you make camp? And I said, oh, I guess I didn't need to. And she goes, oh, you silly. And they put me in the canoe, and I was just stunned. I didn't speak. Like I didn't know what to say. Here I'd lost exactly 24 hours. I was a little bit annoyed because I wanted to have the experience of my solo for 24 hours, but here it was gone. And it was so strange because all I remember was using my name as a mantra. I remember kind of hearing wolves howling on a different island or on the mainland or something. But I don't remember it getting dark. I don't remember, I wasn't really stiff from sitting on a granite boulder for 24 hours. I have no idea. Now, Pat, our friend Pat, will tell you that they called me by my soul tone and that those were the good guys that time because there was absolutely no memory, no nothing. It was just like a clean 24 hours down to the second of the canoe going and then the canoe coming back. It was quite amazing. So I still to this day don't have any idea that where that 24 hours went.
So you
And I
never,
remember
when you got regressed, that was for another event. So,
it was for uh, the half man, half wolf. And I don't think we got any information on it. It was like there was just nothing there. It was just nothing. So I don't know what to say about that. So then the next thing then years passed and I moved to Vancouver and I got married and I moved back here. We moved to L'Orange. We bought this house. I was in the house here one day and my son was about probably 7 or 8 years old. And it was an October day at 2 p.m. I remember that, October 2nd, 2 p.m. And he came running in the house. He was in the backyard. He's like, Mommy, Mommy, there's a yellow ball in the sky. And I was like, what? And so I ran to the backyard, and sure enough, there was this yellow ball moving over the house. So I ran in and I ran out the front door, and I'm standing there and looking at this yellow ball. And we got a pair of binoculars, and it just hung there. It stopped, And I was looking at people, looking at cars, looking at it, like, oh my gosh, what's going on, And then it suddenly sort of changed shape. Like I went to an orange hot dog shape and back to a yellow ball, and then just went right up. And there were some kids out in a town called Warman from here who saw it and reported it to a local UFO reporting thing. So somebody else did see it. Then I was at a four-way stop a few years later, and there was a purple ball hanging right over the four-way stop. I was just like, what? Am I the only one seeing this? It had a black square on it. And I thought, well, I should pull over. I should look at this more. And then I was given the suggestion, no, just let it go. Just let it go. So I just drove on. Oh my gosh, I'm skipping over something. Okay, so during this time of the balls, it was right after the yellow ball. I started blowing my nose one day. I think I forgot to tell you this one, Mr. Gray. And, we had a big black dog with long hair. And I thought, oh, do I have a dog hair up my nose or something? And I kept blowing and kept blowing. And then I pulled out this long, it looked like a dog hair, but it had a jelly-like blood clot on it. And I put it on a piece of wax paper. It was probably about 2 inches. It was incredible. This thing came out of my nose. And I laid it on some wax paper and I thought, wow, I'm going to take that to the lab and look at it under the microscope, And the next day, it was all translucent and dried out. And I got this message, just dump it in the garbage. Just dump it in the garbage. Now, Nancy Talbot, who I used to work with in crop circle research, she told me that sometimes, again, you get this suggestion that if that thing comes out of your nose or whatever, that you're just going to get rid of it. And sure enough, that's what I did. I didn't tell anybody for 4 months, not even Nancy. So that was in that right after the yellow ball. And then I thought, oh, I guess I'm off the program now, ha ha ha, little joke. I didn't know what it was, but it was a beautiful little cylindrical blood clot around like a hair is all I could say. And then the next day it just was completely desiccated and translucent. And I still remember it wafting into the garbage, It had a little weight when it came out, but it didn't have any weight the next day. So the next thing is we're going on holiday to Vancouver and my son starts saying, Mom, there's a white ball following the car. And sure enough, there's in the day, we're driving close to a place called Surrey, which I didn't know about the Surrey corridor where there's a lot of sightings of these white balls apparently. And there was one of these white orbs following our car. Now, my mother has had the experience of UFOs following her and her friend up to the lake up north, hovering over the lake while they made camp. My mother also had the experience of driving on the highway to Regina. She was the first female rep for CUPE, and she would go on these, highway journeys. And there was a big diamond craft hanging over a field, and all the cars on the highway were pulled over looking at this giant diamond craft. She also had the experience of being down by Chamberlain. I think it's a small town where you pull over and get gas. And she saw a craft hanging in the sky. She said to the guy pumping her gas, "Hey, do you see that?" And he didn't see it. And she felt like, uh-oh, you know, I can see it. He can't see it. What's going on? Am I crazy? I better not talk about this anymore. I mean, this is how people, I think, tend to handle it sometimes, especially back in the day. And she was a psych nurse. So, she doesn't want to be seen to be crazy. So those are basically the experiences. And then it came to 2017, and I was just about to go to Jordan, and I was listening to a podcast in my room, and you go into that state where you're not asleep, you're not awake, and literally this thing walked into my room. And I didn't know anything about shadow people. I didn't know anything about a top hat man or anything like that. I'd never heard of this at all. I just knew that this thing had walked in my room, and he was like flat and matte black. And he had very broad, pointy shoulders and a very narrow waist, a little flick of a tailcoat. And it looked like he had like a little top hat on. And he was looking looking around. And I thought, top hat, really, buddy? I was so annoyed. It's like I became so annoyed and had such disdain for this being. Like, how did you get in here type of thing? Top hat, really, buddy? And then as soon as I had that thought, he saw me. He focused on me. He looked at me. But he had no face. He was just flat, black. And it's not like his torso came towards me, but he had this long leg. His leg came out and his knee went onto my bed. And then his arms didn't have hands, they just had points. And his arms came and grabbed my wrists and pulled my wrists up. And again, I had this weird paralysis. And I thought, okay, I'm not having this. Like, I got very annoyed. And so I had to pull from my gut. I felt like I was pulling this no up from my gut, like up through my heart and then out through my mouth, just no. And I pulled my arms back and it snapped like silly putty, just snap. And I thought, is that all you got? Like I was just completely disdainful of this, whatever this was. And then it was kind of gone. And I thought, wow, what the heck? And I think, yeah, that was in 2017. And I was talking to a friend in Texas, and he informed me of this concept of shadow people and top hat man and all this. And I was like, are you kidding me? I had no concept of this. So I did a little research on that, wrote a blog about it. My blog is at tinfoilhatlady.com. And I thought, wow, the next night I went to bed, I thought, geez, this is how this works. They want you to be afraid. Because of course your mind goes to, is that thing going to come back again? And then you realize if you follow that thread in your mind, you're going to get afraid and that thing's going to come back. I think there's sort of a parasitic relationship with our emotions there. But because I was going to Jordan and I had a special energetic mission to do there, I just wondered if it wasn't like a little test to see if I didn't have, if I had conquered enough fear to do this job I was supposed to do in Jordan or what. Somebody said, you never know, maybe they work for you in a way. And I don't know what these things are. Do you have any opinion on what these shadow people things are even? Like, I was so annoyed that this thing got in my house. Couldn't believe it.
Yours was different. Normally they talk about the hat man, but yours, it's a top hat man with
Yeah.
like this type of robes, or
he just had like a tuxedo jacket on because I saw the flick of his tail. But then when I was making the drawing for you, I thought, geez, he looks like a little devil, doesn't he? Like you always see the devil in a top hat and nice clothes and a little tail, right? But it was like, to me, it was the flick of his tail jacket. But he had quite the narrow waist because I took the time to take a very good look at him before he saw me. And before I said, top hat, really, buddy? Very disdainfully, in my mind, because we were speaking, psychically, I guess,
Because we tend to always fight back these events, but I'm curious what would happen if we actually went with them.
Well, I didn't feel right about it at all.
Okay.
So my nature, I had out of body experiences as well in my life. And when you're out of your body, it's a you're more your natural spiritual self. And my natural inclination was disdain towards this thing. Like it was not something that deserved my respect. So I don't know about that. I just know what I went with my initial, my initial feeling was that this thing shouldn't be here. And he definitely wasn't going to grab me like that. Like, no, it doesn't feel good to have some weird black thing wrap its tentacles around your wrists and yank your arms up,
So he didn't feel benevolent. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I felt more powerful than him.
Okay.
But
Well,
I felt like he was trying to scare me.
Okay.
Right? Because I don't believe people know who they are. Like we have a lot of power.
Mm-hmm.
We are very mighty spiritual beings. And we've been sort of brainwashed and corralled to think that we're accidents of the universe and we're meaningless and we have no power.
I thought the most promising thing I heard from the net was really from Alex Coley when he said that we're genetic royalty as humans.
Yeah, we do have a lot of genetics blended in.
Yeah, so that's amazing.
Yeah, he also said something about like, why do we have to pay to live on a planet we were born onto?
Yeah, the system.
Or one of his contacts said that,
No, they're right. The system has to change. Now you talked about OBEs. I want to listen to you, really.
Well, I used to work at Children's Hospital in Vancouver, and I worked in the blood bank at night, and there really wasn't a lot to do. So between 3 and 6, I would get pretty tired. And sometimes I would just take the phone to the back and I would just lay on the counter, dim the lights, and just sort of rest, like not sleep, but just sort of rest myself. And during this time in my life, I think Spirit was trying to get me to do more of my own professional theater productions. And I wasn't really following that. I was, just doing my job and maybe doing stage managing here and there. And I wasn't really breaking out and directing my own shows or producing my own shows. So I was laying on the counter one night and everything started to shake. And I didn't know anything about OBEs either. I just thought we're having the big earthquake finally in Vancouver, here it is, right? But again, I'm in this paralysis and I feel like I'm going to fall right off the counter. And so weirdly, I I fell off the counter, but then I looked at the underneath the whiteboard and there was this lion there. Then I realized that there had been melted lion paws going to the wall underneath the whiteboard. And I thought, jeepers, they already think I'm weird. How am I going to explain these melted lion paws into the floor? And there was this female lion, and she was just like, rah, rah, rah. I thought, oh boy, she's going to jump on me. She's really mad. And so then she jumped out of the wall, and I went, ah, and then boom, I'm right back up on the counter. And I'm like, what was that? That was a weird dream, right? So the next time I do this at work, same thing. I get this shaky shake. I'm like, oh, here it is again. I fall off the counter. And now this time I'm just sitting on the floor and I can see all the drawers are vibrating like this underneath the counter. And I think, oh, I better stop that. And so I put my hand out to stop the drawers and my hand goes through the drawer. And I'm like, wow, that's fun. Do. And I just sit there for a minute. This is what I mean. You're more like yourself when you're out of your body. It didn't frighten me. I had fun with it. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. I can put my hand in and out of the drawer, not like what's going on, And then I thought, because you're in this realm that responds to your thoughts now, I should stand up. So I'm up and I'm looking and I have a much taller vantage point out of my body. And I'm looking out at the window where we hand blood out. And everything in the room is kind of like, again, sepia tone. It's lit from the corners up, kind of how they have the lights in the Great Pyramid, in Egypt. They have how they light these things with fluorescent tubes at the corners of the floor there. And I look out and there's me and my sister, kind of like the same age when we moved up to Canada, 6 and 3, about like that. And the little me is saying, you're an asshole. I'm like, you're an asshole. And then I look over here and there she is in the wall where the lion was before. And she's like, I live inside you or whatever. And she jumps on me and I'm like, ah, again. And then I'm back up on the counter and I'm thinking, what the heck is this? And at this point, I start to tell my friends. And one of them is like, you better read this book called Journeys Out of Body. and this other book called Far Journeys, because I think you're having spontaneous out of body experiences. So I started to do that and learned about vibrational levels of consciousness and stuff like that, which is still in my work today. But the weird part is I got all excited and I thought, okay, I want this to happen again. And so I had one more experience in the lab and then nothing since then. So the next weekend after that, I brought this little cot, like a folding cot. And then in the night, I thought, okay, I'm going to stretch out this cot. I'm going to bring the phone back here. I'm going to walk to the front. So I walk to the front and I dim the lights and I go back and I lay down on this little cot and I thought, okay, I'm going to stay conscious, but not, I'm going to have an out of body experience. Then all of a sudden this wind came and it blew into my feet and it blew me up out of my body. And then I was up in the corner of the lab looking down, and it's weird sepia tone again. So I'm outside my body, I guess, but I'm way up at the ceiling looking down from the side of the room. And I realized I can see myself going to turn the lights off, just how I did a minute ago. And I'm watching myself go and turn the lights off and watching myself go back. It's like, what is going on? And then, boom, I'm back on the little bed and I open my eyes and the telephone is floating in the air with the handle off of it. And I'm kind of like, well, thanks for leaving the phone off the hook so I could have this experience. And then it's just snap and everything's back to normal. And that was the last time anything like that ever happened.
Oh, that's weird.
But what I finally did was break out on my own and go to a different theater. And then I found a little guy who had written a play because he had a note on the wall, a little note. And I directed this play and we had a big success with it. And then I started to take control of my creative destiny. And that cat thing, that lion thing, when I was in Egypt, of course, there's a statue of Sekhmet in there that they don't tell you. Sometimes she speaks to you or people have paranormal experiences in there. And sure enough, this statue of this big cat started to speak to me. She said, I went in there and I was completely like shy in front of her and I ran behind the statue and I was like magnetically stuck to the back of it. And I was just crying and crying and she was laughing at me. You don't have to be so shy, she said. You're my daughter in whom I'm well pleased. So I think I must have some cat energy somewhere in the universe because again, cats always come to me as well. I've had many cats throughout my life, but it's nothing I seek out. They just come to me type of thing. So I don't know.
I had a friend who did she went to Egypt, she did the tour, and I guess her skin tone's a bit like Egyptian-ish, let's say, but she's from Australia, and one of the people that worked there, at least one of the locals, thought she was someone like who worked as an Egyptian type librarian or somebody like in the archaeology domain, and he took her and brought her somewhere else and showed her this I guess it's not really a fetus, but it was a mummy. He unwrapped the mummy, and the mummy was the mummy of a child, but you could see the head wasn't human.
Right.
With the big eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and she also had she told me a story about hearing like having a conversation with a statue there. So,
yeah, well, maybe it's the statue at Karnak. It's the Sekhmet temple at Karnak, and not everybody gets to go there either. I was just lucky to be touring with the Kemet school, and they always got us into the coolest places. But I've heard a number of stories, and I said afterwards, like, you guys, why didn't you tell me that could happen? And they're like, no, we can't tell you before. Like, that's not how it works.
wow.
But
So you did travel a lot. You got any cool stories that you might want to share during your travel?
Well, that one from Egypt for sure, where the statue of Sekhmet spoke to me, and then it was like a progression of things that happened there. I went to different places, and it's like my heart was opened more and more at each place. It's sort of like I went through a process, and we went to the Temple of Dendera, and that's where they have the underground crypts, with the light bulbs and there's a place there called the Chapel of Hathor, and there's a picture on the ceiling. And I don't know, I just sort of had a breakthrough there. and the energy was so wonderful. And the goddess energy or whatever spoke to me, and I said, I just want to live here. And she was like, yes, of course, it's beautiful, but it's one frequency. You can't just stay in one frequency. You have to go into the world and, move through all the frequencies or whatever. But another beautiful place that I did visit was Lake Titicaca, the island of the sun. And there's a crossing point of the plume serpent and the rainbow serpent, which are energy lines that run around the planet. And they cross right at the island of the sun there. And there's a marker there. The air is very thin there. So there was oxygen available if you needed it or what have you. But how it manifested for me is I didn't realize there was all these little pigs running around. We were looking at the beautiful, gorgeous South American blue sky and the gorgeous view that you have there and everything, and the rocks and the ruins that are on at that end of the island. And then when I looked at my photos, here was all these little pigs running around, and I cannot for the life of me remember any pigs being there. That's for sure.
Oh.
But yeah, a long time ago, a woman had at a book club actually told me that I was a magnetic spinner and I was going to be taken to different places on the planet to spin magnetics. And I didn't really become aware of this until the last trip when I went to Jordan. And I knew that I was spinning some magnetics there. And now there's craziness going on there. But all this stuff has to play out in the Middle East and with our humanity right now. Like, I listened to was it Bob Wood? Someone talking about the mirror technology, where it says like all the timelines are converging right now, and we're going to move into this different consciousness because people are, we're moving into a higher state of being right now, and there's a group of people that like to have people enslaved, and there's a group of people who like to have people free. Even in the whole realm of the universe, I think there's those that want to enslave and those that want people to be free and creative, and these two forces tend to work in tandem. And who knows, nobody really knows what's going on here or where we are or what we are. So it's fun to have theories, and we do have these experiences to try to make sense of. These things that happen to me, and I can't really explain it. And the older you get and the more you look back on your life, you realize, wow, there was really some anomalous things that go on in this world. So I'm just glad to be able to share the story with you and whoever's going to listen to this. And
Yeah, it's as if we're living double lives right now.
yeah.
And it's a bit hard sometimes. Now
Yeah.
you've because I know you worked in the medical field, but you're also quite knowledgeable regarding Reiki now.
Yeah, Jikiden Reiki. I did study Western Reiki years ago, and it just didn't really speak to me. And then I think it was 2014, I became certified in Jikiden Reiki, which is actually the original teachings from Japan. When you do take the Jikiden Reiki training, they offer you the history, which I can't go into right now or else I have to kill you, about how this all came to be with the Western Reiki getting out. So I really vibrated with the Jikiden Reiki. And then when I went to Peru, I think it was in 2017 as well, I had a chance to go to the Sacred Valley and have some ayahuasca time. And I really realized that, my ability to run energy is something that I need to offer to other human beings on the planet at this time. And so that's what I do. And I also like to work with sound because I really believe that people's voices are like the healing for their own body. The water in the body creates a media for cymatics, which is how sound creates form, sacred geometry to keep you healthy and at ease. So I use solfeggio frequency tuning forks. I douse the chakras and then use the tuning forks and different bowls associated with the chakras to help balance the energy systems in the body. I also offer inversion therapy, which is just tilting the body at increased angles just to decompress the joints, lift the organs, increase blood flow, stuff like that. But I
Wow.
really love putting my hands on people and running energy. This is something we can all do, non-sexual human touch. It's like when you're cuddling a kitty or cuddling a baby, or if you stub your toe, oh, and you put your hand on your toe, that's Reiki. It can be done through the eyes. It can be done through rubbing. It can be done with the breath. Blowing your breath can actually offer Reiki. So it's a nice, simple thing that can help heal. But, you know, we're all under the thumb of the pharmaceutical industry, and we think that we need to take pills, that everything for health is outside of us, when really just making sound. And that's something we explored in Egypt, that a lot of these rooms in various places in the temples were actually sonic therapy environments. When you go into the king's chamber, it's probably one of the most resonant places I ever was. I could hear the breath going into my lungs. You know, it was only myself and another person. The more people in there, the less resonant, but it's still extremely resonant. So I really think some of the ancient cultures, not that I think the Egyptians built the pyramid, because once you go there, you kind of realize, whoa, this is a big machine of some sort, you know. But I think that the ancient people knew more about frequency and sound, maybe levitation, maybe cutting stone with sound, so many different things. I listened to Matilda McElroy was a nurse in 1947 who was used to interview a crashed alien because the alien would only talk to her psychically. And some of the information this alien gave was quite interesting. And one of the things was that the tools that were used that leave these ridge marks, like in the caves in Longu, China, and at Bolivia and in Peru as well, and even in Egypt, these tools are in the hands of the Ponce Stele at Tiahuanaco. So I was lucky enough to be on tour with David Hatcher Childress and Brian Forrester. And I said to David, what are those things in his hands? And he's like, those are his ritual cups, Beata. And I was like, well, David, what if those are actually the tools? And then we had a good little talk about that. So there's so much to learn about our history and where we are and the psychic connection that we have to the natural world, because there is an unseen world, you know. And that's why I like to go back to my gospel church, because I really think if you have to ally yourself with the forces of good, like I don't go with the spirit of religion, like you said in my intro, but I really encourage people to ally themselves with the forces of God or the forces of good, because it's a real thing. Life force is in you. And sometimes we take it for granted because we have such a strong life force. We take it for granted. But it's something that when you clean your chakras and you use your vocal resonance, the vowel sounds, the C scale, the bija sounds from India, these are the things that keep your resonance up. And then viruses and bacteria and things, they're low vibrational. So then you will not have dis-ease. You'll be easy. You'll be at peace. You'll be calm. And you won't get sick. And you won't need a jab.
I used to do energy work on my body. I would try. I can't remember. I think Donna Eden. I'm not sure if that's her name.
Oh yeah, Donna Eden. Yeah, my cards here. Yeah.
I do her. But what she suggested on the tapping, the energy at work, and I did feel like a change in me really in the early days when I started getting sick. But you know.
Yeah, we are little Tauruses, right?
Yeah.
And so that's how we process information through the chakras that sew our subtle bodies together, because we have our physical, our emotional, our mental, and our spiritual. And they want to keep us in the lower feminine chakras and not allow us to come to the upper masculine chakras where we can actually branch out and have some fruit and be creative. If you actually break things down and look at it, you're not rewarded for spiritual maturity, only intellectual maturity. And all those chakras are like under the earth. You have to process up through the heart chakra, and that's you're breaking through the soil. And then you're into the structuring masculine. So for each of us as individuals to have that balance between the lower feminine, the wild, chaotic feminine, and the upper structuring masculine. But you have to be honest about processing your concepts through the chakras. So I guess the thing is, it's sort of like the heart is the marriage chamber. And if you're having any kind of negative emotions or anything from the environment, you have to be honest about what's happening. So you could say, oh, I'm feeling resentful. And then if you bring it to the heart and you don't bypass the heart, then the heart says, and yet I love you still. Yes, you're feeling resentful, and yet I love you still. And then you speak some truth, and you gain true insight, and then you reroute new conceptual wisdom for others to pick up on, because we're all just processing these concepts. So the root is the concept, the belly is the first feeling, solar plexus is the opinion and the ego, and that's as far as society wants you to go. And those lower bodies are what the enemy can manipulate. But because, the masters like Jesus and the others who came and rooted the concept of the spiritual body, well, now we can come to the heart. No man can come to the Father except through me. And then the evil one cannot manipulate your spiritual body, only your physical and mental and emotional bodies.
I remember
So
when
this is,
we had people come over and we worked on their chakras, and we used pendulums just to show them really
yeah.
the size of their chakras. And so when you get to certain areas, you can see that, okay, well, your throat's weak, so maybe that's why you have trouble talking or you're less
Yeah, because it's not
expressive.
pulling the energy up. And people spiritually bypass. They go from the solar plexus right to the throat. They
Wow.
don't want to process through the heart, right? So if you're just speaking your ego, it's like, ugh, what is your voice? What is your truth? Are you lying? What insight are you really gaining? And are your seeds in your masculine ejaculation out the top of your crown chakra, are they fertile?
Yeah.
Or are your seeds just dead and just falling down and not helping evolve? This is how we evolve our species, and
Coming
they
back
really,
to
yeah.
sorry, about your well, growing up, because you've had these experiences, didn't you have like somebody to go to talk about these things? Because it could be like, well,
Yeah.
re-traumatizing for some.
For some, well, I really forgot about it. It's amazing how you just push these things down. You just don't want to talk about it. Like when I saw that craft with that boy who I had loved since grade 4, and now here we are in grade 12, and I still couldn't be honest with him. He said, "Did you see that craft?" And I was like, "No." There was just part of me that just didn't want to have that in my life. I just wasn't ready for it. And that could be the way it's supposed to be.
You
I
sent me
really
like
don't know.
you sent me an image with regarding balls of string, like a ball.
Oh, yeah. I guess there are other crafts. See, I forget everything. I forget everything, Mr. Craig. Yeah, that happened the night I was sitting out. And that must have been 2015, 2014 era. And I was sitting out after work one night because I would work evenings and be home at 11:30 at night. And I thought, wow, this is a beautiful night to see a UFO. Just kind of came in my head. And I saw these three little stars just moving. And then I realized that's a black triangle with three little stars, you know? And then it was moving, and then it kind of went to the north, and then it came from the south, went a little bit to the north, and then over to the west. And then I got up out of the chair and I was like watching it disappear. I was like, wow, that's crazy. So I kept looking around at different portions of the sky, and then almost right over the house, there was like 4 or 5 little balls on a string, like a caterpillar just flew over. And Pat said, well, sometimes they will drop those. And I didn't know anything about that at the time. I just ran into the house. I had had enough. And I made a quick YouTube video. So I think on my channel, youtube.com/tinfoil hat lady, I have the video from 2014 or 2015 where I just had the sighting and I came in. And then one night too, there was actually a crescent shaped craft that went over, and it was quite amazing. It had like stripes on it, so which is how I could make out the outline of the crescent, was because of these stripes that kind of picked up light from something, and it just kind of cruised over. And wow, so this summer I didn't even go out and try because sometimes it's a little bit frightening when you go out there and you're like, oh, hello, are you out there? I want to see somebody. And then they show up. You get a little bit, do I really want to see somebody? I'm not sure. But who knows? Sometimes these things you think, yeah, okay, but other people are having these experiences as well. Like I'm not the only one who sees these triangles or these balls of light or these crescent craft, I'm sure.
If you ever had like military stuff happen to you, spying or
I'm not sure about that. I will tell you though, I was living in Minot, North Dakota in 1966 when they shut down the Air Force Base. Um, my mom told me it was because there was a man on drugs who had took all the missiles offline. Now, when I read Stephen Greer's book, Project Disclosure, there's a report from 1966 at that Air Force base that says a craft hung over the base and disabled the missiles. And they had told the public, who they also put on lockdown, that it was a man on drugs who had taken the missiles offline. That's the closest thing to anything military that I remember happening. I did go on an investigation because I used to do crop circle research and paranormal investigation in the province. And we drove quite a ways away to a place where this young couple, the girl had had problems with getting pregnant, losing the baby, getting pregnant, losing the baby, stuff like that. They had seen all these little red eyes or something in the forest. There was silver balls that had landed in their grass outside their house and left swirls. They felt like a portal had opened and they saw military people. This is the report that they gave to me, but again, this is not something I've had much experience with. Just that report from those people, and then, what happened at the base in 1966, as far as I can recall.
Since you had missing time, do you know if you ever had like phantom pregnancies growing up?
No, I didn't have anything like that. No, no, not at all, not at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what these things wanted from me. I I have no idea. It's just that Pat said the two things that happened in the farmhouse were probably the genetic farmer race because it was so sloppy, because I could see them or whatever, but that the missing time was probably the good guys who called me by my soul tone because it was so clean. Like I have absolutely no memory at all. And it was so minute to second. As soon as they went around the corner, I basically was gone and I was back just before they came back around the corner.
Yeah, Pat's amazing. She's really knowledgeable.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So between Pat and Robert, they've helped me sort out,
Yeah.
quite a
Okay.
bit of things that have gone on because you don't have anybody to talk to about it. So you just kind of put these things,
Yeah.
I don't know, away in the side of your mind, I guess. Um, but traveling and thinking about things and having experiences with ayahuasca and things got me really thinking, like there's really more to what a human being is. And there's probably people that like to harvest energy from us or other things, I'm sure, because of the powerful nature of our spirituality and our connection to source.
Did you see anything when you did the ayahuasca thing?
Well, you see lots of things.
Yeah.
Everybody has a different experience again, of course, right? One of the first things that happened, which I thought was quite interesting, is I started to see like textile patterns of South America and the neon kind of colors too. And I was thinking, oh, this is where the people get the patterns from. Oh, wow. But it's all common sacred geometrical things. And it was interesting because the ayahuasca would show me um, sort of at first some scenes from my life, like me trying to get my point across or having conversations. And it kind of showed places where you have frustration in your life or whatever. And I would just blow these things away, get really involved in something. And then I found I could just use my breath and just go on to the next thing. Um, and it showed me the word knowing, and then it pared it down to now. It's like there's really only the only thing to know is now, that it's the now that you live in. And also it showed me a butterfly that sort of had big leathery wings. I don't think it was a earth butterfly, some kind of butterfly, but it only lived for 5 beats of its own wings. And then it died. And then when it died, this little spirit angel came out and said to me, "You see, even for this life, I am curious." So it's like there's an eternal consciousness that takes physical form to have experience. I don't think that we're learning as much as we're perfection, but we're having an experience
Mhm.
for whatever reason. Maybe we're eternally bored and we just want to have experiences and feed that information back to source. I'm not sure. Nobody really knows where we are, or what we can do.
Yeah.
Seems like we have these resets periodically too. I've been watching archaics.com and thinking about a lot of things lately as well about resets and what our true history actually is. We don't know that.
You sent me a list of stuff that you might want to get into. There's a Children of Christ Consciousness Worthy. That's interesting. What's that?
Um, Well, again, this comes down to us not understanding that we are Christ consciousness, that we are worthy beings, that we have that spark of divinity, because the church will teach you you're a born sinner. You know, the world will teach you you're evolved from a monkey, and the whole world just is a fluke and it just evolved out of nothing. And that makes you feel like, well, what's life about? Shopping and getting drunk, you know, having sex with people, wearing fancy clothes. So it kind of erodes the concept of our creativity, our worth, and our divinity. So that's what I mean by that. It'd be nice to infuse children at this point with their own divine worth as humans of Earth. You know, it's like in the American Constitution, which is so amazing, that your rights are given to you by God. By the fact of you being born, you have inherent rights. And that's why it's important to protect those concepts in that country as well.
So much better than the Canadian concept of it's disgusting.
Well, groups don't have groups. We've given groups rights, but groups don't have responsibilities. It's important that we stand up for individual rights, freedoms, and responsibilities. So how do you educate people to understand they have responsibilities, that they're powerful, so they have to take responsibility, the ability to respond? But, you know, they don't want you to be functional or healthy.
So let's call it a day. Do you have any maybe a last story you might want to share, or perhaps a closing statement to share with everyone?
Well, I just encourage everyone to go to my website, tinfoilhatlady.com. I have a lot of writing there, all the way back to 2012, I believe. I've got some pictures from my trips and various concepts. Sympathy, empathy, and compassion are not the same. I do have the YouTube channel as well, and I've made a lot of videos. The Subversive lecture of Tinfoil Hat Lady, my one-woman show on 9/11, is pinned to the top. So it's 27 minutes of pure comedic genius. If anybody's interested, you can apply that to today as well, because it's always the same story over and over and over. There's one pattern and it's sacred geometry, and we're living it. So thank you very much for having me here today. I really appreciate you letting me tell my stories.
That's been fun. And yeah, you're a very knowledgeable person, so I'm glad you came on today.
Well, if anybody wants to talk to me, tinfoilhatlady@gmail.com.
And to those watching today's episode, hope you enjoyed it. I'm your host, Mr. Great. More interviews coming up, and I'll see you guys next time. So take care, everyone.
Hello everyone, this is Mr. Great, and thanks for watching today's episode. If you are an abductee, contactee, or experiencer, and you believe that your story could help others, please feel free to contact me through my YouTube channel email. When it comes to experiencers, the ET phenomena, and the future, remember, truth will out.